Elizabeth Warren has held Wells Fargo's feet to the fire, including the CEO, who hasn't really paid any consequences for their wrongdoing. It turns out that an investigation has found that some of their low-level employees who wanted to call out bad, unethical behavior were reprimanded or fired. Okay, so CNNMoney did a really great investigation where they talked to a dozen former Wells Fargo employees, branch managers, people who worked in HR, and what they found was if they called this ethics hotline to report any wrongdoing by Wells Fargo, they would get fired, and they'd get fired pretty much immediately. In fact, one former employee says, quote, "They ruined my life. They ruined Bill Bado's life so much that he is about to have his home foreclosed. He got fired for reporting some wrongdoing." Now, he not only refused orders to open phony bank and credit accounts, the New Jersey man called an ethics hotline and sent an email to Human Resources in September 2013, flagging unethical sales activities he was being instructed to do. Also, CNNMoney found one former Wells Fargo HR official said that Wells Fargo would find ways to fire employees in retaliation for shining light on sales issues. It could be as simple as monitoring the employee to find a fault, like showing up a few minutes late on several occasions. So in the case of Bill Bado, what happened was 8 days after he reported the unethical behavior, he got fired for tardiness. And the former HR official says if this person was supposed to be at the branch at 8:30 a.m. and they showed up at 8:32 a.m., they would fire them. Oh, do you know how many times I would have been fired at TYT?
Oof, okay.
Do you know how many times you'd be fired?
Okay. So listen, guys, they're not even trying to hide it. 8 days after you complain about illegal activity at the bank, you get fired for tardiness. That's basically saying nobody's ever going to hold us accountable for anything. But the part that drives me crazy is to Elizabeth Warren's point yesterday when the CEO, John Stumpf, was in front of the senators. She said, well, look, you're now blaming it on the low-level employees. You say they make a lot of money. They made between $30,000 and $60,000. You made $19.3 million in 2015. So, and you profited off of all these scams. And she said, then you just fired all the people who did it, even though your executives drove them to this kind of pressure. But now you see this story, and it's actually damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Exactly.
For everyone who complained, hey, this is illegal, we shouldn't do it, they were fired. And then afterwards, when they were caught, for everyone who did do it, they were also fired. So look, I don't think that the rest of the media, because they're the corporate media, it makes sense, they don't understand, they don't cover it, the rage that Americans actually have against corporations. It's almost never talked about, because the reality is people live this. They know. Heather Brock is a business banker in Texas. She's a good American in the middle of Texas saying, hey, this isn't right. We can't do this to our fellow neighbors. I don't know what her politics is, but she's your neighbor, right? And she's there, she's trying to be ethical. She's got 2 young kids. They're like, fire her, get her out, because she won't break the law. And then her friends, I don't know who's at the bank, etc., if they succumb to that pressure because they just saw Heather get fired, they do it. Then once they're caught, the executives don't suffer any consequences. They keep the millions of dollars, and then they fire the guys who did it and the guys who didn't do it.
That's because the executives don't care about the employees. They don't care about the low-level individual. And when I say low-level, I mean their positions within the company, obviously. They don't want to pay the consequences for their wrongdoing. They get to benefit and they get to profit from these scams. And when they get caught, they don't have to pay any of that money back, which is what we found through Elizabeth Warren's line of questioning. And so, you know, Heather Brock, you're right. I mean, what an incredible human being to stand up, speak truth to power, and say, no, this is unacceptable behavior. And she says, as a result of, reporting this, I endured harsh bullying, defamation of character, and eventually being pinned for something I didn't do.
So, look, you guys see it because you live in the real world, but the guys on TV, they don't see it because they don't know any of you guys. You know what Bill Bado's doing now? The guy the hero in Pennsylvania who tried to point out what they were doing wrong? He's working part-time at ShopRite. That's why his house might get foreclosed on. Part-time in a grocery store. Because he was a banker.
Yeah.
And he did the right things. Like you know how they say something, it's a few bad apples. No, there's a few good apples, and they're immediately eliminated from the barrel, And then they have to struggle and work part-time and put on the apron and do that whole thing and try to barely claw on to their, hang on for dear life to save their family's house so they're not homeless. So you guys see that all the time. That's why there's anger in the country. But when you turn on TV, everything's hunky-dory and corporations are wonderful human beings and they never do anything wrong. I don't know why people are upset. Because, you know why? Because they've been crushing us this whole time. Corporation by itself is not necessarily, it's an amoral machine. It doesn't do evil, it doesn't do good, it's not patriotic, it's not American, it's a machine.
It does do evil.
Okay, it does, but it doesn't.
For profit.
Because it's a robot. Because it's a robot. And we programmed it to maximize every single cent. So don't get surprised when it crushes us on its way to maximizing profit. But you never hear that on TV. And if anybody ever challenges it, they go, oh, look at this socialist from Vermont. Young Turks membership is awesome.
Says who?
Says me. But
please believe me.
TYTnetwork.com/join.